Hello, viewers to Verona Star. I am your host, Emily Costa, and today we have a treat just for you guys. We have a special guest that I will be interviewing. Come over here, Juliet.
Hello, Emily. It is a true honor to be here, Verona Star, today. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, the honor is all mine. We are so pleased to have you today. How are you?
I'm well, a little nervous for this interview. How are you?
Oh no, but there's nothing to be nervous about, and I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Now, it's time to get down to what we've all been waiting for, the juice about what Juliet thinks. Are you ready for your first question?
There isn't much juice about me, but I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Perfect. That's the spirit. For your first question, what were your feelings about Romeo when you first saw him and after he kissed you at your house party?
To be honest, when I first saw Romeo, it was like my whole world changed. Before I had met him, I didn't think about getting married or even starting a family. But right when I looked at him, I saw our future together, so that feeling I was feeling was a bit overwhelming, but in a good way. While we were talking, I was a little bit nervous, so I started to tease him. Fortunately, he took the teasing as a joke. After we had kissed, I was completely and wholeheartedly in love with this man. I was in love with a man that I didn't even know the name of. Once I had realized that he was a Montague, it was like my heart shattered a very small amount because I knew that I would have to choose him or my family. But at that moment, I didn't care about the future that didn't involve Romeo.
My, that must have been magnificent and horrifying all at once.
It truly was, but one of the best moments of my life for sure.
Well, there you go. That's the plus side. On to our next question. What was it like telling Romeo that you wanted to marry him and him saying yes right away?
It was exhilarating. I was petrified that he had heard my declaration out loud, but then I was head over heels when I heard he felt the same way. But right after I felt that little voice on my head told me to watch his intentions because he was just a boy. After listening to that voice, my inner warrior took over me and it gave me the guts to tell Romeo that if he wanted me, he would have to marry me first. When Romeo didn't even hesitate to say yes, when I said let's get married, I felt 100 pounds lighter.
Wow, you must have felt so relieved to know that he felt the same way as you at that time.
I did indeed.
Now, time for our third question. When you were told to meet Romeo at Friar Lawrence's cell, what were your feelings for Nurse? From what I can tell, you seemed a little bit impatient before she told you, but once she told you, you loved her so much.
You are 100% true. When I finally saw her after all those hours waiting, I was so relieved. When she was catching her breath from the big hike, I was way too impatient. All I cared about was Romeo and his response. So at the moment before she told me, I was angry and sad that she wouldn't tell me. I told her that I would do anything for the news, but she still waited until she was ready to tell me. Once she had told me what Romeo had said, I was relieved and overwhelmed. I was so happy that we were going to get married, and I was happy that Nurse had finally told me. At that moment, I was very happy and grateful for Nurse.
I can relate to both you and Nurse, so I can see both of your views. Let's move on to the fourth question. What was the wedding like?
Well, since it was a secret, it was small, just the people that knew it was happening. It was still magical. I felt I was finally being married to that one person in my life that I loved the most and who loved me just as much. There aren't any words to describe my experience.
It does sound truly magical. Now, another question that is related to your wedding. On your wedding night, when you had found out that your cousin was dead, slain by your husband, what was it like having to act like you were sad for Tybalt and angry at Romeo when really it was just the other way around?
Well, really, it wasn't as hard as it seemed. I just had to switch their names in my head. I was crying for my banished husband, Romeo, but outside I acted as though I was crying for my dead cousin. The hardest part for me was telling my parents that I wanted to see Romeo dead and that I hated him. It nearly broke my heart. With Tybalt, though, I was a little sad that he was dead, but I'd rather it be him than my husband, Romeo.
Yes, I can see how that you show your true feelings, but just for different people. It must have been so hard to know that both your husband and your cousin would be dead soon, before Nurse told you that Romeo was just banished.
It truly was. I thought that Tybalt's death was hard, but when I clued on to the part about that since Romeo fought Tybalt, he would be put to death, I nearly had a heart attack, because of all these deaths would be the death of me.
Yes, that would truly be the death of me too if I was also in your place. On to our next question. What was going through your head when you woke up after the wedding night and with Romeo and him telling you that he had to leave?
When I woke up, I was happy, but when Romeo told me he had to leave, I felt despair. I was in the moment that I have ever been happiest in. In just a few minutes, I was in one of the saddest moments I had ever been in. There aren't many words to describe the joy and then sudden pain that I felt.
Oh my goodness, that must have been very weird for you indeed. We only have a few more questions left for you, Juliet. One of those are, what was it like to be told to either marry Paris, a man who's almost double your age, or be sent out to the street alone, hungry, and to have no help from anyone?
It was very weird. My father isn't really the type of person to rush people into things that they don't want to do. So when he told me I was to marry this man in just a short few days, it was startling. I'm so used to my dad letting me make my own decisions that when he made such a huge decision for me in such a short time, giving me no option, it was just horrible. It was also kind of terrifying because I hadn't ever seen this side of my dad before. So it was like I was speaking to a different person who just was dressed up as my dad.
Oh boy, that must have been weird for you indeed. For my next question, I'd like to know what drove you to threaten your own life when you went to go see Friar Lawrence after you had your unusual interaction with your father.
There were a couple things that drove me to threaten my life. One was the fact that God tells us we should marry one person throughout our life, and then I would be married to two. The second marriage would be against my beliefs and God's beliefs. The second reason was that I just didn't want to marry someone I didn't love when I was already married to someone who I loved very much and who loved me just the same.
Yes, I can see those reasons very clear. For my second last question, I'd like to hear what your thoughts about what you would do if you and Romeo had fled Verona together. Would you guys leave for another city, or would you wait in Mantua until you could come back to Verona?
Well, I think Romeo and I would wait in Mantua until Friar Lawrence and Nurse had told everyone the true story of what happened, and everyone would forgive us. It would be very hard for me to leave Verona, let alone leave it and never come back. Verona walls are my home, and it would be weird to leave them, but I would leave them for Romeo if we were together.
That is all so touching. And for my final and last question for today, Juliet, it would have to be, what was it like thinking that you were the only way for you to survive, to be with your true love, was to pretend to be dead and leave your family? Do you love Romeo that much that you would pretend to die, break the hearts of all those you could love, just so that you could be with your husband?
There was no doubt in my mind. I would do anything to be with my husband, even if it meant breaking the hearts of those you love. Once you find that one person, your one true soulmate, there isn't anything you wouldn't do for them, or just to be by their side. Romeo is that for me.
Well, that is all just so cute. Sadly, that is all the time we have today, folks. We, Verona Star, would like to thank you, Juliet, for coming here today and answering our many questions. Good night, Verona, and I'll see you next time on Verona Star.